12 months from now, you will be somewhere. The question is whether that somewhere will be meaningfully different from where you are today. Most people, if they are honest with themselves, will be in almost exactly the same financial position next year as they are right now. Same income, give or take, same savings, give or take, same vague anxiety about money, same promises to do better, same gap between intention and reality. And the year after that will look the same, and the year after that. Not because they lack intelligence, not because they lack opportunity, but because they keep doing what they have always done, expecting different results, never stopping to examine whether the rules they are following are actually designed to help them win, or simply to keep them playing a game they cannot win. But here is what nobody tells you. Getting ahead financially is not about making more money. It is not about finding the perfect investment or discovering some secret the wealthy are hiding. It is not about intelligence or education or luck. The people who actually build wealth over time, the ones who look back after a decade and cannot believe how far they have come, they are not smarter than you. They simply operate by a different set of rules. Rules that seem almost too simple to matter. Rules that will never make headlines or go viral because they're boring, unsexy, and completely unimpressive in the short term. But these rules, applied consistently over 12 months, will put you further ahead than most people move in a decade. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly what they are and why almost everyone ignores them. Let me start by destroying a belief that is costing you more than you realize. You have been taught, implicitly and explicitly, that financial success looks a certain way. It looks like a nice car in the driveway, a house in the right neighborhood, clothes with the right labels, vacations that photograph well. You have been trained to measure your progress by what others can see, to calibrate your success against the visible markers of achievement that surround you. And this training is bankrupting you, slowly, invisibly, one status purchase at a time. Here is the truth that will set you free if you let it. There are two games you can play with money. The first is the status game. The status game is about appearances. It is about looking successful, looking wealthy, looking like you have made it. The status game is played on Instagram and in parking lots, and at dinner parties where people compare lifestyles without ever mentioning numbers. The status game is visible, comparative, and absolutely exhausting. It has no finish line because there is always someone with more. The car that impressed your neighbours last year looks ordinary this year. The vacation that felt luxurious becomes the baseline for next time. You are on a treadmill that speeds up every time you think you are getting ahead. The second game is the wealth game. The wealth game is invisible. It is the number in your investment account that nobody sees. It is the absence of debt that nobody notices. It is the security of knowing that you could walk away from your job tomorrow and be fine for a year, for 5 years, forever. The wealth game is not comparative because nobody knows your score except you. And the wealth game is calm in a way the status game can never be. Because you are not performing for an audience, you are building something real. The problem is that these two games are in direct competition. Every dollar you spend to look wealthy is a dollar that is not building actual wealth. The German sedan costs not just its sticker price, but the decades of compounding that money could have generated. The designer clothes cost not just what the receipt says, but the freedom that money could have purchased. And the cruelest irony is that the people who most successfully play the status game are often the least wealthy, because they have converted every available resource into appearances while building nothing underneath. Meanwhile, the actual wealthy, the people with real freedom and real security, often look surprisingly ordinary. They drive paid-off cars that are 5 years old, they live in houses they could afford on half their income, they wear clothes that do not signal anything to anyone, because they understand something that status players never learn. The only audience that matters is yourself 10 years from now. And that future version of you does not care what your neighbours thought of your car. That future version of you cares whether you built something that gave you options. So here is the first rule. Stop playing the status game. Not because material things are bad, but because competing for visible success is a guaranteed way to destroy invisible wealth. Every financial decision you make, ask yourself which game this purchase is playing. Is this for me, or is this for an audience? Is this building my freedom, or is this building my image? The answer will not always be clear, and sometimes you will choose image anyway, and that is fine. But ask the question. Because most people never do, and most people end up with impressive lifestyles and empty accounts, wondering why financial peace always seems just out of reach. Now, assuming you have decided to play the wealth game instead of the status game, you need to understand how that game is actually won. And this is where most people go wrong, because they imagine that building wealth requires dramatic action. Big income jumps, perfect investment picks, some moment of transformation where everything changes. But this is not how wealth works. Wealth is built the same way a wall is built, one brick at a time, day after day, with each brick seeming insignificant on its own, but all of them together creating something substantial. This is the second rule: progress over perfection. Most people fail financially not because they make catastrophic mistakes, but because they abandon good habits when the results are not immediately visible. They save for 3 months, see that their account balance has barely moved, feel discouraged, and give up. They invest for a year, experience a market dip that wipes out their gains, conclude that investing does not work, and withdraw. They make a budget, break it in the first week, decide they are just bad with money and stop trying altogether. But the people who build wealth do something different. They celebrate small wins. They acknowledge progress even when that progress seems pathetically minor. They understand that the first $1,000 saved is harder than the next 10,000, not easier, and they give themselves credit for doing the hard part. This is not feel-good nonsense. This is behavioral science. Reinforcement works better than criticism. Momentum matters more than magnitude. The person who saves $50 a month and feels good about it will still be saving in 5 years. The person who tries to save $500, fails, and feels ashamed will have given up by February. Small wins, celebrated consistently, beat ambitious goals abandoned quickly, every single time. But even small wins require something that most people dramatically underestimate: time. And this is where the third rule separates those who build wealth from those who merely dream about it. You need to think in decades, not days. The reason most people fail to build wealth is not that they lack knowledge or discipline or income. It is that they expect results on a timeline that wealth does not operate on. They want to see meaningful progress in months. They want their portfolio to grow noticeably by next quarter. They want the gap between where they are and where they want to be to close quickly enough that they can feel it happening. But wealth does not work this way. Wealth compounds slowly, invisibly, and then suddenly. The first 5 years feel like nothing is happening. The next 5 years feel like slow progress. And then somewhere around year 10 or 15, the curve bends upward and everything accelerates. This is the mathematics of compounding, and it cannot be rushed. The person who invests consistently for 7 years and then quits has done almost nothing. The person who invests consistently for 20 years has done almost everything. The difference is not in what they did differently during those years. The difference is simply that one of them kept going. Here is what this means practically. Patience is a competitive advantage. Most people cannot wait. Most people need to see results now or they lose faith. Most people will start and start again, never building the momentum that creates real wealth. If you can simply outlast them, if you can keep going when the results are invisible, if you can think in decades while everyone around you thinks in days, you win. Not because you are smarter, not because you have better information, but because you understand that time is the ingredient that cannot be substituted and you are willing to let it work. But none of this matters if you do not know where you actually stand. And this is the fourth rule, the one that most people skip because it is uncomfortable. You need to know your relationship with money. Not in some vague, abstract sense, in concrete, specific numerical terms. How much do you earn? How much do you spend? Where exactly does the money go? What is the gap between income and expenses, and is that gap positive or negative? Most people do not know these numbers. They have a rough sense, a feeling, an approximation. They know things are tight or things are fine, but they could not tell you within $500 what they spent last month or where it went. And this ignorance is not neutral. This ignorance is actively harmful, because you cannot improve what you do not measure. You cannot fix what you cannot see. The person who does not know their numbers is like a pilot flying without instruments, making decisions based on intuition in conditions that require precision. So here is what you need to do, and it is simpler than you think. Track your income and expenses for 1 month. Not forever, not as a permanent lifestyle. Just 1 month of actually looking at where the money goes. Use an app, a spreadsheet, a notebook, whatever works. The method matters less than the act of paying attention. And when you have that month of data, look at it honestly. Look at the subscriptions you forgot about. Look at the categories that are larger than you expected. Look at the gap between what you thought you spent and what you actually spent. This single act of awareness will change more about your financial life than any strategy or hack or trick ever could. Because once you see the reality, you cannot unsee it. And from that clarity, better decisions naturally follow. But even with perfect clarity, even with full awareness of where you stand, you need something that most financial advice treats as optional but is actually essential: a buffer. This is the fifth rule, and it might be the most psychologically important of all. You need an emergency fund. Not because emergencies are common, though they are. Not because the math makes sense, though it does. But because the presence of a buffer transforms your entire relationship with money and with life. Think about what it feels like to live paycheck to paycheck. Every unexpected expense is a crisis. Every car repair, every medical bill, every appliance that breaks becomes a source of panic because there is no margin for error. You make decisions from a place of fear, taking jobs you hate because you cannot afford the gap between paychecks, staying in situations that damage you because the alternative seems financially impossible. This is not just uncomfortable, it is corrosive. It wears you down. It makes you risk-averse in ways that prevent growth and risk-seeking in ways that court disaster. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine having 3 months of expenses sitting in an account, untouched, waiting for an emergency that may never come. That money's not exciting. It earns almost nothing in interest. It will never make you wealthy. But that money buys something more valuable than returns. It buys peace. It buys the ability to make decisions from strength instead of desperation. It buys the space to take intelligent risks because you know that failure will not destroy you. The person with a buffer negotiates differently, thinks differently, sleeps differently. And here is what most people do not realize. Even 1 month of expenses saved puts you ahead of the majority of Americans. The bar is that low. The advantage of simply having a buffer is that profound. But willpower alone will not build that buffer, just like willpower alone will not maintain any of the habits we have discussed. This is the sixth rule, and it is the one that separates people who intend to do well from people who actually do. Automate good behavior. Remove yourself from the equation. Stop relying on discipline and start relying on systems. Here is what this looks like. The day you get paid, money should automatically move from your checking account to your savings, to your investment account, to whatever categories matter to you. This transfer should happen before you see the money, before you have a chance to spend it, before your brain can generate reasons why this month is different. You pay yourself first, not because you are disciplined, but because you have made discipline irrelevant. The money is gone before willpower enters the conversation, and then you spend what is left. Not the other way around. Most people spend first and save what remains, which means they save nothing, because there is never anything remaining. The money expands to fill the available space. Expenses rise to meet income. But when savings happens automatically, first, invisibly, you adapt. You do not miss money you never saw. You adjust your lifestyle to what remains, and the gap between income and expenses becomes structural, built into the system, not dependent on your daily choices or monthly discipline. This principle, automation over willpower, applies beyond saving. Automate your bill payments so you never miss one. Automate your investments so you never have to decide whether this is the right time to buy. Automate everything that good financial behavior requires so that good behavior becomes the default. The fewer decisions you have to make, the fewer opportunities you have to make bad ones. Boring and automatic beats exciting and effortful every single time. But even with automated savings and automated investments, there is a vulnerability that most people ignore until it destroys them: dependence on a single income stream. This is the seventh rule, and it matters more in an uncertain economy than ever before. You need multiple sources of income, not because greed is good, but because resilience is essential. Think about what it means to have one job as your only source of income. One decision maker can end your entire financial life with a single conversation. One company's fortunes determine your family's security. One economic shift in one industry can invalidate years of experience and leave you starting over. This is not paranoia. This is the reality that millions of people discovered during the last recession, and the one before that, and every economic disruption in history. The people who recovered fastest were not necessarily the most talented. They were the ones who had built alternatives before they needed them. Multiple income streams do not have to mean multiple jobs. They can mean investments that generate dividends. a side project that brings in even a few $100s a month, skills that could be monetized if needed, a partner who also earns. The specific sources matter less than the principle. Do not build your financial life on a single point of failure. Diversification is not just an investment strategy, it is a survival strategy. And the time to build alternative income is when you do not desperately need it, not when the primary source has already disappeared. Now, all of these rules require something that will feel uncomfortable at first. Detachment from other people's opinions. This is the 8th rule, and it might be the hardest to internalize. You need to make financial decisions based on your values, not on what others think you should do. And in a world designed to make you care desperately about external validation, this is almost impossibly difficult. Think about how much of your spending is driven by what others might think. The apartment in the expensive neighborhood because you are embarrassed to give an address in the cheaper one. The car upgrade because your coworker got one. The vacation you could not afford but posted anyway because you wanted people to see you living a certain life. These are not needs, these are performances, and performances are expensive. Every time you buy something to shape others' perception of you, you're trading real wealth for imaginary status. You're paying for approval that evaporates the moment you stop paying. The alternative is to build what might be called financial self-trust. This means making decisions based on what actually matters to you, independent of whether anyone else understands or approves. It means being willing to look less successful than you are, because you understand that real success is invisible and false success is expensive. It means being okay with silence when others are bragging, with modest choices when others are splurging, with playing a different game than the one everyone around you seems to be playing. This is not easy. Humans are social creatures, wired to care about reputation, sensitive to judgment in ways we often do not consciously recognize. But the person who can detach from external validation has a superpower that the status-seeking crowd will never understand. They can actually keep the money they earn instead of converting it into signals that impress no one and disappear into nothing. And finally, the 9th rule, the one that underlies all the others: invest in yourself. Not as a feel-good platitude, but as a calculated financial strategy. You are the highest yield asset you will ever own, and most people dramatically underinvest in themselves while overinvesting in everything else. Think about what happens when you buy a stock. You are buying a small piece of a company, hoping that company will grow and become more valuable. But you have no control over that company. You cannot make it more productive, more innovative, more profitable. You are a passive participant in someone else's story. Now think about what happens when you invest in your own skills. You're making yourself more valuable, more capable, more able to generate income. And unlike a stock, you have complete control over this asset. You can decide to learn, you can decide to practice, you can decide to become better at something that the market rewards. And the returns on this investment are asymmetric in a way that no financial asset can match. A skill you develop stays with you forever. It cannot crash. It cannot go bankrupt. It compounds as you build on it, as you combine it with other skills, as you find new ways to apply it. The person who spends $1,000 on a course that increases their earning power by $10,000 a year has made an investment that would be the envy of any hedge fund manager. And yet most people hesitate to spend money on their own development, while gladly spending it on things that depreciate the moment they are purchased. This is the reframe that will change everything. Education is not an expense. Health is not an expense. Anything that makes you more capable, more valuable, more resilient is an investment with compounding returns. And the earlier you make these investments, the longer they have to compound, the more they will ultimately be worth. The 25-year-old who invests in skills will benefit from those skills for 40 years. The 50-year-old who does the same has half as long for the returns to accumulate. Time matters here just as it matters in the market, and the time to start is always now. So there they are. 9 rules that seem almost too simple to matter. Stop playing status games. Celebrate small progress. Think in decades. Know your numbers. Build a buffer. Automate everything. Diversify income. Ignore opinions. Invest in yourself. None of this requires wealth you do not have. None of this requires intelligence beyond what you already possess. None of this will make headlines or impress anyone at a dinner party. But applied consistently, over 12 months, over 5 years, over a decade, these rules will put you further ahead than almost everyone around you. And the reason is simple: almost everyone will ignore them. Almost everyone will keep playing status games while wondering why they feel poor. Almost everyone will abandon good habits when results are not immediate. Almost everyone will think in months while wealth is built in decades. Almost everyone will avoid the discomfort of knowing their real numbers. Almost everyone will spend first and hope to save what remains. Almost everyone will depend on a single income and pray nothing goes wrong. Almost everyone will make financial decisions based on what others might think. Almost everyone will treat education as an expense rather than an investment. You do not have to be almost everyone. 12 months from now, you will be somewhere. The rules you follow between now and then will determine where that somewhere is. Most people will be in the same place, having done the same things, wondering why nothing ever changes. But you have a choice. You can keep following rules that were never designed for your benefit, or you can adopt rules that actually work, rules that are simple enough to remember and powerful enough to transform. The choice is yours.